This video will go over exercise 7a, the sliding puzzle. So the sliding puzzle exercise is mimicking one of these sliding puzzles where you have all the pieces scrambled up. One of the pieces is missing so that you can slide the pieces around to solve the puzzle. You can see from my example, I have an image that's been scrambled up, so we're creating an unsolved sliding puzzle. You should find an image. I would recommend using pexels.com. You get some nice selection, and you can also download custom sizes. So since we are in the middle of fall, I will go for an autumn photo. And I only recommend that you choose a landscape photo. So that means one that is wider than it is long. So I'm going to go here with the image of the forest and download the large version. You should download something that is 1920 pixels wide. So if you don't see that value, head over here to the custom size and you could type in 1920. And I will say thank you to David. For some reason, David's image isn't downloading. So let's try a different one. Let's go over here and I will go to large 1920 and download. But please take a moment to find an image that you like so that it creates an interesting result. Let's head on over to Photoshop. And in this exercise, don't create a new document. Instead, you'll go File, Open. I want you to open the image file. And then navigate to where you downloaded the file. Click on it and push Open. The reason we opened it is because now we have the canvas matched to the image perfectly, and we're working inside an image file at its full resolution, which is nice. But we're about to do some Photoshop operations, so let's go ahead and just take the extra step of saving this document as a Photoshop document. Right now it's a JPEG. We will go File, Save As to change it to a Photoshop file. So when this window pops up, change the format from JPEG to Photoshop, and then you can rename the file to exercise 7a sliding puzzle and push save. One more thing I want you to do so that this exercise runs smoothly, and we'll also learn about the crop tool right here. So you can press the crop tool or press the letter C on your keyboard. So the letter C is the shortcut from the crop tool. Ensure that you're not using any of these other tools in the group, that the icon looks like what I have here. And you see this little box come up, and this will allow you to crop the image. And what you should do is come over here and change it to ratio, and we will keep the 1920 wide, and we will do 1200 pixels tall. The reason I'm doing this is because we're about to divide the puzzle into 3 rows and 3 columns, and these numbers work perfectly. They divide by 3 so that we have no overlap and no pixels that cause problems. So 1920 by 1200, that looks good to me. I would turn on delete crop pixels so that everything outside the crop will be gone, and then push OK. There we go. So now the next thing we should do is make some guides. So we're going to do this very quickly using a guide layout. So go to the View menu and do New Guide Layout. And you should ensure that your options look like mine. We have 3 columns with no width or gutter, 3 rows with no height or gutter. This will basically allow Photoshop simply to divide the canvas into 3 equal rows and 3 equal columns. And ensure there are no margins. You can leave these two boxes at the bottom checked just to clear existing guides if you had any. And you can also turn on the preview just to make sure everything looks okay, where you have the canvas equally divided into 3 by 3 grid. And then push OK. So now I'll show you the process for cutting out the squares. We will use the rectangular selection tool, the rectangular marquee. So it's the first selection tool. And using guides, we just want to click as close as possible to the corner in one of the rectangles and click and hold and drag out the selection until it snaps into the other guides. So you should have the marching ants indicating that you have this rectangle selected. Now to cut this selection to a new layer, we go to Layer, New, Layer via Cut. Layer, New, Layer via Cut. And since we're going to do it a bunch of times, it might be worthwhile to learn the keyboard shortcut for this exercise. It's a hard one. Command Shift J on a PC. I'm not sure. I assume it's Control Shift J. And this will cut the pixels and paste it into a new layer in one step. So I'll click on it. And you can now see that we have a new layer created with the selection. And the selection from the background was removed. So you could go ahead and repeat this process for the other layers. So come click for the next rectangle and drag until it snaps. Just make sure that it's snapping in the top left when you click and it's snapping in the bottom right when you release. You also want to make sure that you're on the background layer. If not, there's actually nothing there to cut. You see if I hide the background and you're selected on layer 1, you'll see that you actually have nothing selected. So just make sure you have the background active when you go to your layer, new, layer via cut. I will quickly just repeat this process using the keyboard shortcuts to make it go fast. Whoops, see, I was on the wrong layer. Oops, I was on the wrong layer. You see, trying to go fast. Sometimes it's better just to slow down and take your time and do things right. If you go too fast, you make mistakes. You might not snap it properly to the guide, so take your time. And last but not least, there we go. So I've now cut up my background into 9 different rectangles. And what I will do to finish the sliding puzzle is come over to the Move tool, and I will hide one of the pieces. That gives us the empty space to start dragging the pieces around. I'm using the Move tool with Auto Select just to click and drag the pieces and to mess them up a little bit. So we are unsolving this sliding puzzle. And there you have it. Just to double check that everything looks great, I'm going to hide the guides in the View menu, Show, and I will unselect the guides. So I'm not deleting them here, I'm just hiding them. And everything looks good. So you might see some little gaps or you might see some white lines if perhaps you didn't crop the image at the beginning to the correct pixels, or if some of your selections did not snap perfectly to the guides. But don't worry about it too much. The goal here was to practice using the marquee, the rectangular marquee, and to learn about cutting selections to new layers.